Hey everyone, it's Steve here from CG Geek, and I have a fun video for you guys today on learning how to do 2D animation within Blender 2.8. So we're going to be taking a look at Blender 2.8's new 2D animation tools within the grease pencil, and actually we'll be looking at how to do 3 different methods of animation in today's video. Starting with frame-by-frame animation using the grease pencil tool, then we'll take a look at some of the interpolation tools that you can use to generate keyframes between frames, and then I'll finish off by showing you guys how to rig an actual 2D character real quick and do some rigged animation. So I've actually been doing a lot of 2D animation recently with the release of my new channel, Mimi 9 Times. You guys might have heard about it. It's a fun animated storytelling channel. There'll be a link to it in the description if you guys want to check it out. In this video, I will also be using the Wacom Intuos Pro, a digital graphics tablet that I will be kind of reviewing in this video, giving my thoughts on it as we go throughout the video and sharing a few tips and tricks that will speed up your workflow when using a graphics tablet like this one. Now, before we dive headfirst into animation, I'd like to first thank Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Skillshare is one of the largest online platforms for learning anything you want. With over 25,000 courses, there's something to be learned for everyone. And these courses are taught by talented professionals with the skill and know-how. So you can learn anything from drawing amazing looking characters with a pen and pencil to starting your own business. They're very affordable with a yearly membership costing just $8 a month. And I have a special offer for my subscribers. The first 500 viewers to sign up with the link in the description below will get the first 2 months free to try it out. So don't wait, be one of those lucky 500 viewers to sign up with the link in the description. Starting off, we're going to be animating this little scene you see here. This is something that I put together in Blender that works for a nice little animation, sort of a typical cartoon animation where a character runs and then runs right off a cliff, realizes it at the last second, and falls. So there's some fun animation to be done here, some movement, obviously, some smoke animations and stuff. So I put this together as an example on how to show you guys how to do the frame-by-frame animation within Blender. I'll include this scene as well as any other scene that I might be using in the video in the description below for you guys to download the starter file. And one thing I want to quickly mention before we jump into it, what's really sweet about the Wacom Intuos Pro is that you can just unplug the USB-C port here and it will work off of Bluetooth once you connect it to your computer. So you can hold it on your lap and use it like a piece of paper. Just makes it convenient for getting started. Also, I want to mention, if you're interested in the Wacom Intuos Pro that I'm using, there'll be an Amazon link in the description where you can check out the exact tablet that I'm using in this video. So the Wacom Intuos Pro does come in around $350 to $380 right now on Amazon, making it one of the more expensive options for a graphics tablet, but I will say that it has a very premium feel to it. Like I've been saying, it kind of feels like an Apple product almost, where like it or hate it, it has that premium quality to it, and this is definitely one of those. It feels very premium. So I've been really enjoying working with this. Without further ado, let's just go ahead here and get started now. So I'm going to switch to edit mode. As you can see up here, I'm in edit mode, and I'm just going to select our character here by clicking and dragging, and selecting all those vertices, and we'll get him set up where we want him to be for frame 1. So we want him to be running off this cliff. We probably want him to be a little bit smaller, so I'm just hitting S and scaling. And then you can also use Alt-S to scale the thickness of the curve. I'm just going to use the circle wheel on the tablet here to zoom in. You can just grab your screen over here, and if you zoom in a little bit here, you can see when I hit Alt-S, that is scaling the thickness of the stroke. So when you scale it down, you might have to also scale down the thickness of the stroke just to get the right sort of line thickness that you're going for. You'll also want to make sure that all the layers that you are not working with currently are locked, so you won't be accidentally selecting any of those in edit mode. If I'm in draw mode here and I jump ahead in our timeline to a different frame, if I was to start drawing here, you would see that our character disappears, as this is now the new keyframe that we're creating. If I was to grab one of my materials here, like our character material, you would see that, yeah, it creates a new frame and deletes the old frame. Well, that's okay actually for some things, because you'll want to be redrawing your character, and a feature that will actually make this way easier is if you turn on onion skinning. Onion skinning is this little option over by the layers here, and if you turn that on, you'll see when you jump to a keyframe ahead of time and draw something, that you have an outline of what that layer looks on the previous keyframe right here. So that makes it really easy to see what the previous frame was if you're drawing individual frames for your animation. Now in this video, we have him run off the cliff, which means that we can use most of the frame and just be changing certain aspects of the layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tab into edit mode and I'm going to select my whole character here. So jumping back to frame 1, you can just use the button here to click a keyframe back. You want to select your whole character and make sure that he's where you want him. And then you can jump, I'm going to go about 5 frames here. So I'm going to jump right to about, we'll go to frame 6. So then in edit mode here, you can just grab your character with G and you can pull him ahead. And you can see now that at frame 6, we have a new keyframe where he is moved. Of course, everything is still the same, but he is now in a new position at that keyframe. But if he moved, we obviously need a new pose. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tab into edit mode, and I'm going to unselect everything. And then using the box select mode here, I'm just going to select his foot and his leg there, just part of it. And if I hit L, it will select the rest of that stroke. And I can just delete these points now, because we're going to be redrawing the legs and the feet. So just selecting a bit of each of those strokes by holding shift and selecting it. Once you have part of every stroke selected, you can just hit L, it'll select them all, and then you can hit X and delete those points. Okay, so at this point, get it, point, we need to have a new frame for our character. So I'm going to grab the black material here in my material tab. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw, you can see what his previous frame was here. I'm just going to draw a new frame of his arm kind of coming down here. All right, and now his back arm should be kind of just barely visible as he's pulling it forward. And now his feet should kind of be in the in-between stage. That should work fine for this. And we can just go ahead and quick fill in those feet with our other material here, our filled material. And you're just going to do a simple shape for each foot. Something like that is all we really need to do. We don't have to be too picky on this. Okay, and now what I can do is also kind of distort the body a little bit here. So I'm going to grab sculpt mode, and because he's kind of picking his feet up, it doesn't really make sense that his butt is kind of sticking out here. So I'm just going to go to sculpt mode, and with grab selected, I can pull those vertices in a bit to kind of make it fit this frame a little bit better. You can switch to smooth real quick and smooth that out a little bit as well. And there's a nice in-between frame. We can also change the position of his head a little bit. If we go back to edit mode, and select a chunk of those vertices, hit L to select them, and maybe he can be kind of throwing his head back a little bit here. And the whole shape of his body could also be rotated a little bit. If you want to select some of those strokes there, hit L, and kind of just rotate the whole shape of his body a little bit for that frame. And you can see you have a nice in-between frame here. Now, as you can see, his pose changes, and all we need is one more pose. Now, I'm only doing 3 frames for this animation to keep it simple for the video. You could always add more in-between frames, of course. So what I'm going to do here is at this point, we want to copy our original keyframe. So I'm just going to click the keyframe right there, Shift D, and pull it ahead. So instead of going into edit mode this time, I'm just copying the keyframe. These are 2 different ways of adding new keyframes, obviously. And on the last keyframe here that I just added, I'm going to select our whole character and pull him ahead of that previous keyframe. As you can see, the onion skinning feature is really helpful to kind of line up your keyframes in the different positions. Of course, here we need new arms and legs again. So I'm just going to select a piece of every one of those strokes. Hit L and X to delete those points. He can kind of be stretched out again in this frame. That's fine because he's, again, extended out. Switching to draw mode and grabbing our black stroke. This leg needs to be kicked back now. Now, something that can be helpful when you're using the Intuos Pro here is there's a lot of options on the side. All these buttons are programmable. So out of all the graphics tablets I've used now, I think Wacom really has the highest quality drivers. It seems like they really put a lot of attention to their drivers, and they're really good. I haven't had any crashes or anything with the drivers, and they have all kinds of programmability, buttons that can be programmed, options that can be changed, and they even have some features like this one. If you're working on a stroke here and you want to get a smoother motion, you can just hit this button here and it gives you precision mode, which basically means the whole radius of your tablet now is just going to be narrowed down to that small view, which allows you to get much more precise movements if I'm working on something like the foot here. So here I'm just going to turn off the stabilizer settings and use precision mode. So precision mode is just one of those awesome driver options that they give you to kind of give better results when you're working and you don't feel like changing your view or whatever. You can just get a nice smooth stroke using precision mode. Okay, so on to the next keyframe now. I can turn off precision mode there. I'm going to go ahead and cycle through these now. As you can see, we have our 2 frames of our character running. He's kind of throwing his head back in the middle there. You can make these even more exaggerated if you wanted to, but it looks pretty good here. As you can see, sitting on frame 1, we have the before and after frames. And what you can do at this point is just cycle between these frames now. So I'm just going to grab that keyframe here and go Shift D, duplicate it, and pull it again about 6 frames ahead. And if I go to that frame now, I can just grab all of those vertices in edit mode and move them approximately to where the next frame should be as he's running across our little mountain ridge here. And then same thing, at this point we would want the extended upwards leg motion. Just grab our original keyframe here, Shift D it, and pull it ahead. And you can see at this point we have a cycled animation now, where our character comes running and is moving at a good clip across our mountain. We have to put that last keyframe in the right spot, of course. So here's some basic character animation of our character running between frames. You can see how the onion skinning option allows you to get much better looking results. And of course, at this point, if you ever wanted to tweak something like, oh, hey, you know, his feet look like they're too strong in the stroke there, you can always just go to sculpt mode, grab the thickness option here, and using this, holding control, you can kind of turn down the amount of thickness. We'll want to turn down the strength here real quick. And then just holding control, you can go ahead and skinny up those legs a little bit. And there we go. This one too might need a little bit of that, just a little bit of skinnying up to make it match the other keyframe. And maybe a little bit at this frame as well, because we didn't do that. And there we go, we cleaned that up quite a bit. You will want to be careful when you're using the sculpt mode here that you're always on a keyframe when you're skinnying something up, otherwise you would be adding a new keyframe. So I'll quick finish this animation up so we have our character all the way to the edge of the mountain here, and once we have him at the edge of the cliff, I'm going to show you guys how we can change his expression and then animate him falling off the cliff in a very cartoon-like fashion. Okay, so here's the animation running him off the cliff. So if I play this through here, you can see we have him making it all the way to the edge of the cliff. Here we need to go ahead and add some new keyframes now for him to change his expression for a moment and then fall. So this is where we get to draw a completely new frame from scratch. So I'm just going to grab a frame right around here, about 72. Let me zoom in here a little bit using the scroll wheel on the graphics tablet. And then I'm just going to kind of position our camera right over our character here. And here we draw a frame from scratch. So I'm just going to grab the draw mode here. And we want to give him a bit of a different face expression here. Also a little bit of a different shape of head, as this time around he's looking at the camera. So grabbing our material here, I'm going to increase the radius of my brush just a bit to kind of match the thickness of our stroke there. Something like that looks like it will work. And here I can just start drawing the face. So here is where I really like drawing with the Intuos Pro. It has a very paper-like feel. So I've used a handful of tablets like I mentioned, and this one has one of the best feels to it. And because it's Bluetooth, so you can just sit on your couch and draw away, it really feels like you're drawing on a piece of paper or a notebook or something. So I really like the feel of the Wacom Intuos Pro. And something else that's really cool is it has a touch mode. So on the side here, if you flip the switch, you can enable touch mode. You can now move the mouse around with your finger, grab things and scroll and whatnot. It basically behaves like a trackpad that's fully customizable and makes it really handy to operate. So the touch mode is a very nice little feature there. So yeah, let's go ahead and draw the face to our character here. Starting with the head here, I'm just going to kind of give him a little bit of that flung over hair. Okay, so I'm going to turn on a little bit of stabilization, not too much. And we can have a little bit of active smooth here as well. So here I'm just giving him a very simple sort of expression where he looks at the camera and kind of realizes his mistake. I'm not going to be going into detail on character drawing, as I have a tutorial on that already for creating a cute little zombie. If you guys want to check out that tutorial for drawing in Blender 2.8, go ahead, there'll be a link in the description or on the screen right now. But for this, I'm just going to do a simple sort of character face here. He's going to have a little bit of an uh-oh expression. This will work. I might just want to scale that stroke up a little bit to face it right there. Just doing a very simple character pose here where his feet are just kind of dangling here. And he's like, oh boy. So just very simple. Arms can be kind of at his side a little bit. And yeah, he just realized that he made a pretty big mistake here. So that's all we really need for that. A quick expression here. This one's going to be one of realization. Now here I'm going to use that precision mode again, and I'm just going to hit the button on my tablet here and give him some of those thin lines right around the eyes that you can use to make him look a little bit nervous. Something like that is about all we need. Okay, so there's our pose. And if we kind of scrub along here, you can see right at that point he changes to realization. And what we want to do here is we want to hold that frame for a second, and then right around frame 75 or so, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to sculpt mode. And again, bringing up our toolbar here with T, I'm going to grab the grab brush, and here I'm going to take our character and just really cartoonily stretch him out a ton. So give him a really stretched out face expression, and then really pull his behind down a bunch. And now you might be thinking that like, whoa, this is going to be a bad looking frame, but it happens so quickly that it really doesn't matter. So you just want to pull him out a whole ton, give him a nice big stretch, and then you can grab a smooth brush and kind of smooth those joints out a little bit so he still looks good in that stretched out pose. And we'll just jump about 2 frames further. This time tab into edit mode, grab our whole body, and pull him down along the Z axis. So right around there. And then 2 frames further, and he can be out of the frame. So if we play this back now, we'll see that our character comes running, boom, and disappears out of the frame. Pretty cool. So you can see how easy this sort of animation is in Blender, and it's honestly a lot of fun. Now I might jump to these keyframes by hitting that button there and make these shapes just a little bit smaller, as he ended up a little bit large in those stretched out frames. So now, pew, disappears off the frame. Pretty funny. Now if you want to let a little bit more time go by so you can see his expression, all you have to do is grab those keyframes, pull them out a little bit, so realization sits there for a second longer before he falls. And yeah, there you have it. So the last thing I wanted to quick show you guys before we jump into our next example of animation in Blender is what you can do here is add some smoke effects that add a lot to our scene. What I'm going to do is on the first frame when he starts to fall here, so I'm going to hit the plus key to add a new layer. And on this layer, I'm going to add some smoke effects. So with our material selected, it's the bottom material here. I'm just going to do some puffs of smoke. Here, you definitely want to turn on the stabilizer settings, as there's no reason not to. And yeah, we're just going to kind of make a smoke cloud. So I'm just going along and adding some strokes of smoke here. We'll add a few in the middle here as well. Sort of a quick puff of smoke. And then we're going to drop to the next keyframe when he's falling even further. And what we can do here is add more puffs of smoke, except this time it's going to be broken up a little bit. So we're going to make a few individual patches of the smoke. Now you really don't have to be picky at all with this sort of cartooning, as the smoke clouds are only there for a split second and they just add a lot to the shot. So here I'm just adding a puffy little cloud sort of following the motion of him with him. And this will just kind of give you the motion line of where your character is moving. All right, so then in the next frame here, we have the character out of the screen and we want our smoke cloud to be kind of broken up. So here I'm just gonna do a few real quick, small little smoke puffs around where our smoke was before. So these are fun, just super simple things. You really can't draw them wrong. However you want to draw them is perfectly fine, and they will look good. Something like that, if I zoom out here so you can see them all. And then we go 2 frames, and we don't need any of them. So what I can do for this is just tab into edit mode, grab them all, hit G once, and you can see that that adds a new keyframe. And then all you need to do is, I don't want to erase my character down here, so I'm just going to unselect him, holding shift and box selecting. And then you can just hit X and delete those points. And as long as there's a keyframe there, it will know that at that keyframe, all the points are disappeared. And basically we need to add a keyframe to tell Blender that at that point, we don't want any clouds. So at this point right here, I'm just gonna tab into edit mode, grab the chunk of clouds there. And again, I'm gonna hit G, so I automatically add a keyframe, and then I can just hit X and delete those points. Now you can see that the cloud appears as soon as he starts to move, and no sooner. So if I zoom out here now, guys, and you want to see the animation played all the way through with the smoke added, you can see if I give her a run through, we have, boom, that nice cartoon-like sort of Looney Tunes animated smoke cloud that appears as he falls. So there it is. That kind of adds a lot of effect to your scene, giving it that motion trail and sort of that cartoony feel. So now that you know how to do these sort of motion cloud effects, you could do the same thing like behind his legs as he's running, similar to what I did in my example, and it just adds a little bit of motion to the scene, makes him seem like he's moving a little bit faster. So I'm really excited to show you guys the next example I have here, and this is scene interpolation. So we're going to be taking 2 frames and interpolating automatically the keyframes between those frames. So it should be a lot of fun, and I'm gonna go ahead and open up that project now. Okay, so in this example scene, again, link in the description, we have a car moving across our scene here. So I have a cute little car here. I'm just gonna lock off all the other objects so I don't mess up anything but the car. So I'm just gonna tab into edit mode and select our entire vehicle here. And I'm gonna jump ahead to about frame 60. And with the whole car selected in edit mode, I can just hit G and we'll move that car to the end of our scene here, rotate a little bit. And there you have it. We have a car that appears there and appears there. Now, if you wanted in between frames without having to manually add every keyframe, you could also obviously do this with object mode, dealing with different layers and animating objects, as a lot of you guys probably know. And if you're not familiar with that, you might want to check out my video on animation in Blender. There'll be a link up there or down there. Anyways, you could do it with objects, but instead we're going to be doing it all within Grease Pencil using keyframes interpolated with Blender. With both those keyframes selected, I'm just going to select our vehicle here again, and I'm going to go up to Interpolate. Right here you can see this option on top. I'm going to grab it. You can see we have two different options for Interpolate, and you can do Interpolate just a single frame or a sequence, and then you can also choose the selected strokes, which is what I want to do here. So go ahead and choose selected strokes. For now, we're just going to leave it on a linear type, and I can choose Interpolate a single frame. And you can see that on frame 4 here, I can determine where I want to add a new keyframe. So if I chose right there, you would see we have a new keyframe there, automatically added, and it's automatically added between the two frames. Now, this option works really great for things like this, but if you're dealing with a completely redrawn character, Blender is going to have a really hard time determining what an in-between frame would be. So it really only works best when you're grabbing an object and moving it, so it can move those strokes to match the exact location of the new strokes, instead of drawing a new object from scratch and trying to interpolate between those two frames. It's pretty much impossible. But you can do some really cool things with it now. So I'm going to show you how you can go Interpolate and choose Sequence, and this will automatically add keyframes between those two keyframes on a linear curve. So if I play this back now, you can see that we have a nice smooth animation of our car driving from left to right. So this is pretty cool. And what's even cooler now is, like I said, you can use the linear curve. So if I Command Z this and go back to Interpolate, you can choose something like the dynamic effect bounce. And this will have our vehicle zoom over here, kind of bounce off the wall, and then keep driving all the way up to the edge using that curve. So if I jump into the middle here, go back to Interpolate and choose Interpolate Sequence, you can see we have all the frames sequenced. But if I play it back now, you can see it's going on that bounce curve, and we have a very different animation. So Interpolate can work really well for certain aspects of animating in 2D. You can even create your own custom curve here. If you go to Interpolation and choose Custom, you can create a curve however you would like to change the way the car is going to be animated. So with something like that, if I went ahead and did it, you would see now that you have a kind of pull forward, kind of back up, and then drive forward again. So pretty cool. And it's a nice option to have if you come to a case where you need something like that. All right, and for this last and final animation technique in Blender 2.8, I'm going to be showing you guys how to rig a simple character and animate it using bones. So really cool stuff. Here I'm just going to use the zombie character that I created in my How to Draw 2D Characters course, already published on YouTube if you guys want to check that out. So I'm going to go Shift A and add in an armature. You can see that gives us a bone right there. If I rotate around here, we'll want to go ahead and go to top view with 7, grab that bone, and just line it up to be right in front of our character. And here I'm just going to set that bone to be right at his waist and scale it up so we have a nice sized bone fitting his whole body there. Now I'm going to tab into edit mode, grab the tip of that bone, and hit E to extrude that bone up along the Z axis just to be for the whole length of his head there. Now I'm just going to grab that bone there and hit Shift D to duplicate it for one of the arms here. I'm going to rotate it and scale it down. And we're just going to position it so it fits the length of his arm here. We're only going to do 2 bones for the arm. Then we can just zoom in here real quick, grab the tip of the bone there as well, and extrude that up for the hand. Now we're just going to do the same thing on the other side here as well. Very nice. And same thing with the legs, except this time we're just going to use one leg actually. So now I'm just going to grab that top bone there, duplicate it for the leg here. We're just going to scale it down a bit. rotate it with hitting R and S to scale that and rotate it down just so it fits over his leg there approximately. It doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm not doing any sort of fancy armature rigs or anything. I'm just setting up the bare basic armature for our character here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to tab into object mode. So what you can do is you're going to select a character, then you're going to select the armature, and you can go Control P. We're going to go ahead and we're going to set the parent to empty groups. I usually do automatic weights, but in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and automatically tell Blender what I want to be assigned to what. So I'm just going to do with empty groups. So with that assigned, now what I can do is I can grab our character, our 2D character, remember, and we're going to jump into draw mode here. And if I go into camera view here, zoom out just a little bit, you can see over on the right side here, if I scroll down to our layers tab, our pencil right here, if I scroll down further, we have vertex groups. And if I drop that down now, you can see we have all those bones assigned as vertex groups. So I'm going to make that just a little bit bigger so we can see what we're doing. And if I switch to weight paint now, what's really helpful too is to see what bone is what, because we didn't name anything, because we're lazy, is what we can do though is jump in to our armature settings here by selecting our bone in object mode and go to our viewport display and just check names. And now if I grab our character again and go back into draw mode, or weight paint I should say, now you can see what bone is what, and it'll make it really easy to assign the right portion of mesh to the bone. So scrolling down here to our vertex groups, I want bone 1 to be his head. So what I can do is I can tab into edit mode. You'll want to make sure your layers are unlocked so you can select all of these portions, and then I'm just going to go ahead and select all of his face, everything that I can anyways, and then I'll hit L to select all the loose portions. And now down in our vertex groups here, I'm just going to assign this to bone 1. So if I hit the assign button now and I jumped over to weight paint, you would see that that portion of our character is now in red. And that is because, actually looks like I missed a stroke there, so I'll just paint that in red there. That is because it is assigned to that vertex group. So with everything red, it means that it'll work well when we rotate that bone, that all the mesh will follow. So let's go ahead and do the same for the body then. I'm just going to tab into edit mode. We're going to select as much of the body here as possible. I'll hit L on my keyboard to select the loose portions of the mesh, and then I'm going to assign this all to bone 1. Assign, and we're good to move on. So same thing now for like the arm. I'm just going to grab C to select most of that mesh. Then I'll hit L to select all the loose portions. And now I just want to hold Control and unselect everything past that joint there, so we don't have that portion of the mesh assigned to that bone. So now I can just assign all this to bone 2. So grab bone 2 and hit assign. And then you would do the same thing for bone 3. Go ahead and select bone 3. And you're going to select all this portion of the mesh down to there. Hit L to select all the loose portions. And then hit C and hold Shift to unselect the portion that was already assigned to that other bone. So just doing that, and then assign that right there. Boom. Okay, so with the bones all assigned to different portions of our 2D character, all you have to do now is go back to object mode, and you can select your armature here, jump into pose mode, and if we go ahead and grab like our head bone here, for example, you can see we can rotate our character around and animate him just like we would a digital character. So all I have to do is go insert rotation, and then jump to, I'm going to quick change this actually to the actual dope sheet there, yep. Then jump to a different frame here, and you can go ahead and rotate his head a bit, maybe forward, and insert rotation right there. Or if you want to just leave this on, it'll automatically insert the keyframes for you, a little bit easier. And then you can do things like grab his arm here, jump to front mode, you can rotate it down, you can even move the position of it a little bit, and rotate this hand down then a bit as well. And you can see that there's a few areas where when you rotate, you might have a little bit of stretching. And this is where you might want to go through in the weight paint mode and kind of paint just a little bit extra to kind of give that nice sort of smooth transition. So I'll show you what I mean. If I grab our character here, and if I go to weight paint, on bone 3, let me go ahead and drop down here to our vertex groups. On bone 3, you might want to grab your weight paint tool. On bone 3, you might want to go ahead and paint just a little bit extra there. And then on bone 2, you would want to maybe paint a little bit extra there as well. Okay, so now back in pose mode, if I was to grab this bone and we'll go ahead and move to a new keyframe here, maybe we'll make him wave. Now when you rotate the bones, you can see that we have a smoother transition. It could still be feathered even more, but that just kind of helps give some better results there. So yeah, you can go ahead now and animate your character sort of waving here by having his hand go back and forth here. Pull it in a bit, pull it out a bit. And you could also be having his head move at the same time. So basically any character motion that you would normally do in Blender, you can go ahead and do now right with a rig. So if I just turned off our overlays there, you can see now that our character is animated using bones. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you had fun learning some of the different styles of animation you can do within Blender's 2D grease pencil tools. Really cool. I've had a lot of fun playing around with them. And like I said, I've been using a lot of the new animation techniques in our new channel, Mimi 9 Times. So go check that out. Get subscribed. I really appreciate any of you guys' support and feedback. So yes, after using the Wacom Intuos Pro now for a few weeks, I am really impressed with it. It's the closest you're ever going to get to drawing on a pen and pencil, I think, with the feel that you get. And then also all of the extra buttons and functionality is really handy. The touch mode, the customizable buttons. Again, like I said before, I really like Wacom's drivers. They haven't had any issues. They're super customizable, and it looks like they put a lot of work into making them very user-friendly. So I really like the drivers, and I like the tablet. It's a little bit more of an expensive one, but if you can afford it and you want something that feels as close to pen and paper as possible, the Wacom Intuos Pro is a great option. So there'll be a link in the description below if you want to check that out. But that's going to do it. I hope you guys enjoyed this animation technique video using Blender's grease pencil tools. I'd like to again thank Skillshare for sponsoring this video. If you guys want to get that free 2 months, use the link in the description below quick. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye-bye!